Welcome to today's workshop and webinar on standards creation through BuildWithin and the Technology Innovation District with gratitude to the Apprenticeship Building America partnership. Today we're going to be focused on getting started with registered apprenticeship programs and go through a little bit of the elements of the apprenticeship standards. We're going to walk through some next steps and have an opportunity for Q&A. So I'm Stephanie. I'm a director of apprenticeships here at BuildWithin and grateful for the time that you all spend to join us today for this call. A little bit of our agenda. So welcome again. Thank you for joining. We will record this session and it will be available at the conclusion of the webinar. We're going to talk a little bit about just an introduction to registered apprenticeships, the benefits of registered apprenticeships, key components of apprenticeship standards. So in moving towards developing and getting a registered apprenticeship program approved, developing your standards is the first step. We'll actually walk through some steps, some example standards, and all the elements that go into that. And then we'll conclude with an opportunity for Q&A. Feel free to put your questions in on the chat. We'll try to field those as we go or at the conclusion. If we don't get to your questions, we have these ongoing. We also schedule one-on-one workshops as needed for anyone that would be interested in support in that way. So why choose registered apprenticeships? Couple of key reasons. Here at BuildWithin, we are big proponents of registered apprenticeship. Many of us were former apprentices or former managers of apprentices and really have seen the benefit from all parties. But key things are skill development, competency development. So high quality training that is tailored to a specific industry, even more so to a specific employer. So the ability to bring individuals in, really train them on your technology, your best practices, and allow them to learn and grow. So our time today will be focused more on the technology side, but this information applies to any type of apprenticeship program. Employee retention. We see over 90% of apprentices are still employed from their employer after 5 years, which is incredibly high retention rates. Improved performance. So apprentices tend to get on, add value, become productive very quickly. As the employer, some of the benefits are a competitive advantage. So continuing not having to deal with as much of a employee shortage, talent shortage, really having an engine to build your own talent, build your own pipeline of entry level to mid-level to high level employees. And there are financial incentives. So more and more from the federal and state government funding opportunities. There's also some particular grants that you have to have a certain percentage of your workforce be in registered apprenticeship programs in order to stay compliant. All right, so this webinar, we assume that there's a little bit of a baseline understanding of apprenticeships if there's interested in moving towards this creation of standards. If not, go back and check out some of our other recordings or webinars on just a basic introduction to apprenticeship. But apprenticeship is really an opportunity, a job for an individual to come in. There's transparency from all parties involved, from the employer to the apprentice, to the administrator, up to the state and federal government, of what this individual should be able to do at the conclusion and what the program entail. So we find this is a huge benefit of registering your apprenticeship program. There's visibility and transparency for all parties involved. What is the training going to entail? What should this individual be able to do at the conclusion of the program? What learning are they going to be participating in? What is their starting wage? What should they expect to make at the conclusion of the program? What are the terms and conditions of employment, training? How will they be supervised? So it really lays out all the different elements. So the apprentice is aware, the employer is aware, and the program is compliant. Really, the purpose is to ensure that apprentices gain those essential skills, the competencies, the knowledge to be able to do their job well and meet those industry standards for that particular occupation. And registered apprenticeship programs are overseen by the U.S. Department of Labor or state apprenticeship agencies, and I'll talk through a little bit of the nuances there shortly. Components of apprenticeship standards. A couple things as you're thinking about pursuing registered apprenticeship. These are things to determine ahead of time. So what role do you want to train in? Where do you have your needs? Maybe that's in cybersecurity. Maybe that's in software development. It could be in customer success. Think about any occupation that maybe doesn't have a 4-year college requirement or is one that you could remove that requirement from and bring individuals in, help them learn on the job. Department of Labor will assist in determining the recommended length. BuildWithin can also assist in that. The programs are anywhere typically calculated in hours. So 2,000 to 8,000 hours. And 2,000 hours is typically about 1 year of work. So think about this from anywhere from a 1-year program for the apprentice up to 4 years. Think about, okay, what is the on-the-job training? What kind of function will they be completing day in and day out? That will feed into the competencies that we'll talk through. So what should this apprentice be able to do? Maybe they can't do it day one. There isn't the expectation that they should be able to do that day one. But after working in your workplace for 1 year up to 4 years, they have the opportunity to build those skills to be competent in certain areas of that job function. The related instruction. So apprenticeships have on-the-job training element where they're showing up to work every day, completing the job, and also complemented by related technical instruction or related supplemental instruction in some jurisdictions. That typically averages out to be about 3 hours a week during the apprenticeship. It can be more. It can be front loaded, so you may focus more on the training in the beginning. It can be asynchronous. It can be in person. Can partner with a community college or a learning provider. There can be a combination. So we can assist in thinking through what maybe existing training you already have, what training sources you've leveraged in the future, and make some recommendations around that. Wages. So progressive wage schedule tied to the skill acquisition. So there's a starting wage, has to be higher than minimum wage, and there should be a progression. So as that apprentice is learning more, developing more skills, adding more value, their pay will incrementally increase until they end at what a traditional employee in that job function would make. So this is also something we can assist with in determining, what is what's referenced a journey worker. So what is a typical employee in that role make? Okay, so an apprentice can come in at a smaller amount. And then as they develop different competencies, there can be one increase, there can be multiple increases, and that really depends on the length of the program. Safety, so a big piece of apprenticeships, and this harkens back from some of the traditional trades, is ensuring a safe work environment. So there's elements of what kind of safety training are going to be included in your apprenticeship standards and what type of certifications or credentialing this apprentice may be receiving during their time. All right, so the steps to create your apprenticeship standards. Identify the occupation. This is the role, the trade, and some documentation. So let's go with cybersecurity specialist. That's the occupation that I want to be to start my registered apprenticeship program in. Now you can select multiple occupations to be approved, but let's just go with this example of cybersecurity. The work processes. So Department of Labor has some great resources on some recommendations on different competencies from other programs, from industry best standards. So that's a great starting point. I'll talk a little bit about apprenticeship.gov shortly. But that's a place to see, what some other programs may have as their work processes. Think about a work processes having anywhere from 10 to 100 perhaps competencies. Really think about what makes a good worker. They can effectively identify threats and use different tools to mitigate that. They can complete an incident report. They have skills to speak in public and train employees on, staying safe in their own personal devices. So what is a traditional cybersecurity specialist at your place of employment? What are the job functions? What are the competencies? What do they do well? You can even think about your job description. Okay, what is this person going to do? What do they need to be able to do in order to succeed in the role? That really helps prepare some of the core elements for the work processes. And then the related instruction. Again, this may look like partnering with something like a community college. It may look like developing additional training materials. It may look like leveraging some of the existing training and supplementing that with different, learning resources. The wage progression schedule. So say the traditional cybersecurity specialist makes $30 an hour. So perhaps you're going to bring in the apprentice at $18 an hour. They don't have the college degree, they don't have the experience. So the beginning, they're doing a lot of their learning, their training, they're observing. Say you have 20 competencies. When they provide provide mastery of 15 of those 20, you move them up to $22 an hour. And then at the conclusion of the program, they get that bump to the $30 an hour, the traditional journey worker or mentor wage. The apprenticeship standards ensure compliance. So you can work with your representative. There's certain determinations about journey worker to apprentice ratios. So in some states that can be a 1-to-1, a 2-to-1. So for every mentor or journey worker you could have 3 apprentices learning from them. In other jurisdictions, and maybe it's 2-to-1. So thinking about how many employees, how many expert cybersecurity specialists do I have at my company? Maybe that's 5. So we would maybe want to do a 2-to-1 ratio. So we would have no more than 10 apprentices learning from those 5 journey workers. All right, so you identify the role, develop those competencies, develop the instruction that will supplement the learning of the apprentices, determine the wage schedule, ensure with your state or federal location that it meets those requirements, and then submit. And I would just note that, these are expected to evolve over time. So perhaps, there's new, generative AI. Maybe there's a new type of competency for your employee based on those evolving, evolving softwares, evolving, just world in which we live in. Perhaps your instruction is going to change over time, that you find this really great course that you want to supplement. The wages, expectation that those will increase over time. So maybe this year you put in for $18 an hour, and then next year maybe your starting wage is increased to $18.50. So this is a little bit of the process. I know it seems daunting, but BuildWithin is here to support. Our partners at Department of Labor are incredibly supportive in helping walk through your specific use case and helping develop your standards as well. All right, so these are some of the resources. I'm going to walk through a couple of these in real time. So reference guide, a standards builder tutorial. There's a standards builder workflow within Rapid. So we'll talk through a little bit about how to create a username in that system. State apprenticeship agencies. So they are really tasked with helping employers get programs up and running. So great resources. BuildWithin, we have opportunities to schedule time as needed for any type of assistance. So this could be getting, reviewing some of the definitions and nomenclature, providing some recommendations on ways to get started, or going through the entire process of helping you create your standards. Industry associations, other partner employers that may be already running apprenticeship programs are a great resource, especially for those competencies, the on-the-job training recommended tasks. There's a lot of materials out there that can be leveraged. And so we know a lot of partners that work collaboratively. They maybe develop their work processes, and then they circulate it with some of the similar employees, just as employers to say, hey, does this also, general enough that it would resonate and it would be relevant in your workplace as well. And then educational partners, and even helping develop curriculum or instructional support. All right, we talked a little bit about whether it's a state agency or Office of Apprenticeship. So there's, in the apprenticeship space, Office of Apprenticeship states, and those are the ones in light blue. So you can look at your state where you primarily function. And those are a little more standardized under the Department of Labor. The ones in Navy are recognized state apprenticeship agencies. So they operate really independently within their own state, maybe have a unique process for developing standards. So what we've talked about today is pretty general, applies to most of these states, but just know that there's a little bit of a difference depending on if you're going through one of the light blue Office of Apprenticeship or the standard registered state apprenticeship agencies. In DC, Maryland example, there's an apprenticeship council. So after you develop your standards in conjunction with their team under the support of BuildWithin, if that would be of benefit, you get to bring those standards to the apprenticeship council. They review that, approve that, and then are a body that would potentially continue to approve any new roles that you develop as you continue to grow your program. All right, before we go to Q&A, I'm gonna talk through a couple of different resources just in real time here. So I'm going to stop share and make sure I'm sharing the correct piece here. Going to go to apprenticeship.gov, and I'll share my screen here again. Let's go. All right, so this is a great resource. Under resources, I mentioned there's, apprenticeship job finder for employers. You can just explore apprenticeship, learn a little bit more about that. You can list any of your apprenticeship jobs. There's a standards builder. I'm going to go to Occupation Finder. And let's continue on with that example of we shared with cybersecurity specialists. So there's cybersecurity engineer, cybersecurity specialist. I'm going to click search. And here on this site, we talked a little bit about, the length of these apprenticeships. So is this typically a 1 year, up to 4 year? So this is a lot of great resources. You can kind of gauge, like, is this actually my role? Some alternative occupation titles, what the ONET code is. So that's the official occupation code. The RAPIDS code, this is the code that is used for apprenticeship. And you can see here that this cybersecurity support technician is typically 1 year. It doesn't mean that you couldn't make it an 18-month program, but generally this is a 1-year program. These are a couple of different cyber defense analysts. Maybe this gets into more of the 2-year function. We didn't talk a little bit much about this, but there's time-based versus competency-based. And this really determines what is needed for the apprentice to graduate. So in this example, in a time-based program, they have to complete the time that is entailed in the program. So they have to complete the 2,000 hours of the 1 year. In a competency-based program, it's more about, is the apprentice proficient in these particular jobs? So in this example, if you went with more of a competency base, you would have the flexibility. If that apprentice completes all the related technical instruction, they complete all of their learning, they have the ability and their competencies, they're proficient in all their competencies, they would have the ability to graduate earlier. There's a little bit of nuance in creating the work processes with time-based. You want to allocate a certain amount of time to various different competencies. But all this to say, the work activities. So this is a resource that is here. As you think about the competencies or what that person should be able to do. So it's a great starting point. So typical work activities, this isn't, yours could look very different if your role is different, but this is a great starting point to say, okay, this role, this ONET code, this occupation, these are the typical work activities. So is this, pretty close to the role that I'm looking to pursue, or is there some differences here? And then there's the ability to even see some recommendations around some of the related technical instruction. So highly recommend this occupations on apprenticeship.gov just to see, is the role I'm interested apprenticeable? So you can see here the occupation have been vetted by the industry. I might look at a different role, let's say, and so this particular product manager is not currently approved, so there's a process to go to get this role approved as apprenticeable, or there's support that we could provide in providing, an alternative role that is approved that's pretty close, that has the ability to be an apprenticeable role. So we're also available to be a resource in that way. Another example I want to share is actually an example standard. So a lot of this is templated, so you don't feel like you have to create this entire document yourself. This is a sample that we can send over to anyone that's interested at the conclusion of the call. But you put your name in, the occupations that you're going to be pursuing, those ONET codes, RAPIDS codes, and this is a little bit different per state, but generally a lot of the same elements exist. So, how will your program be administered? Who is going to be administering that? Which occupations are you going to be training in that? We'll continue on. So the program sponsor, that's typically the employer when we're thinking about a single program, that they have these responsibilities of making sure that the apprentices sign apprentice agreements, that they cooperate in selecting apprentices that align with the program, the details, maintaining records. So this just kind of provides a reminder of all the things that are expected of sponsors that are managing registered apprenticeship programs. Things like if someone is canceled or graduated, to notify the registration agency, the Department of Labor, or state apprenticeship office within 45 days of that update. So again, lots of different pieces here, but I'm going to highlight some of the key elements. So equal opportunity pledge, so that you will be recruiting, selecting, and employees according to your equal opportunity plan. And if you have more than 5 apprentices, creating an affirmative action plan in your selection procedures. And you get to determine, okay, what are the qualifications for this apprenticeship program? Maybe it's 16 years old or maybe they need to be 18. Maybe they need to be able to have, a high school diploma. So BuildWithin, I think we have 17 and above, and we don't even have a high school diploma requirement, but in your setting, maybe person needs to be 18 and they need at least have a GED or high school diploma. This is where you can, if there's any physical requirements, any testing or assessment that needs to go into qualifications for your apprenticeship. Then apprentice agreement. This is all pretty standard in terms of, when an apprentice signs on, they sign an agreement. And this is where I mentioned some of that ratio. So apprentice to journey worker ratio. And journey worker in this world is just, who is that expert or that, fully trained employee in that occupation. So in this, there's a determination of, what that ratio will be. 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 3-to-1 are typical ratios. And there's a determination if it's time-based or competency-based or a combination, and what the length will be. Probationary period is typically no more than a quarter of the duration. So if you have a 1-year program, typically 3 months for the probationary period, but there can be shorter. If your program is longer, the probationary period can extend as well. Some of the protections that they'll be working 40 hours a week, that they'll have their wage progression. There is the ability for you to give prior credit if someone had started an apprenticeship program, or perhaps they've done an associate's degree and they have a lot of, credits for their courses that could apply. These are setting out some standards for how to give credit for prior experience or prior work experience or the related instruction. There's also the ability to determine if the related technical instruction will be during the paid workday or outside of the paid workday. And this is established by you and your standards. Do you want to pay apprentices during their 40-hour tour of duty during the week, or is the expectation that they will be completing their related technical instruction outside of the workday? Some of the safety training, maintaining records, you'll see all of this is pretty templated. So you just insert in this example in the portions that are yellow, how to make sure that the apprentice receives their certificate at the completion, notifying if there's any cancellations, if there's any complaints. There's a contact person that can be contacted, typically, someone in HR running the program. So this is a good start just to kind of think about the standards piece. And then this also provides some definitions. So feel free to request this. We can send it over. It's also on the apprenticeship.gov website. Lots of different definitions that are helpful. And then once it's developed, it's signed by you and your contacted Department of Labor, and that's your standards. Then for the specific roles, something called a work process schedule. So this may look a lot of different ways, but in this example, this occupation is a career development technician. So you put the ONET code, the RAPIDS code, what's the training? Is it time-based or competency-based? In this example, it's a competency-based and it's 4,500 hours. So a little over 2 years for this program, a little bit of a description. And then in this case, there's the overall general areas and then the competencies. So this occupation, the individual at the conclusion of their program should be proficient in being able to apply relevant theory and research about adult learning. They should be able to apply best practices from a knowledge of workforce development approach, effectively communicate with clients, and facilitate discussion both one-on-one and group settings. So it gives you a little bit of a flavor. These look different in different settings, but competencies are really what should this person be able to do at the conclusion of the program. All right. As we go down here, and then this is some of the related technical instruction outline. So this lays out how those 144 hours are going to be spent in developing the skills in this particular occupation. So this looks like it's anywhere from, a 3-hour to a 20-hour course. And these are the core skills that are developed in some of these different areas. So actually this is much higher. So 412 hours for a 2-year program that aligns. All right, as we move on, I'm going to show a little bit of what this standards builder within Rapids looks like. Let's see if this loads up. So in the follow-up information we'll share and on our website, some of the links to create a .gov, login.gov. And there's a standards builder where you can put in some information of how many employees you have, how many apprentices you expect to be hiring during your program, what state you operate in, how many states you operate in. So there's, some information you put in, and then there's the ability for that to highlight some of the individual that you maybe would be your primary point of contact to submit your standards. So highly recommend that, creating your login.gov, walking through that standards builder process, and then you have the ability to go in and kind of see what that looks like as a template to get started with. Okay, so we're gonna end here. I'm gonna share my screen with my contact information, just so you have that, and you're welcome to reach out. A whole team at BuildWithin is here to support, so please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm gonna put this up here. So again, I'm Steffi at buildwithin.com, part of the Technology Apprenticeship Innovation District. BuildWithin, buildwithin.com also has some great resources. So thank you all for joining today, and we'll look forward to future conversations.